Well, you know, my videos might not be very interesting. Um, I mean, I can hardly watch them without yawning, but, I'm trying. Uh, I said at the beginning that I wanted to do something. Why am I wearing my sunglasses? It's ridiculous. Um, Sort of, on an educational level, and I do. So that's what I'm gonna try here. Talk a little bit about what bipolar is and what it isn't, because there's a lot of confusion surrounding that at the moment. Um, Bipolar is, first and foremost, it's a mental illness. Um, I do not have my DSM-5 handy, or I just read you the diagnostic criteria and be done with it. But um, it's considered a mood disorder. It's called bipolar because the name is in reference to the the two extreme mood states that characterize the disorder, and that's mania and depression. But that's really a very the most simplistic uh, definition, because bipolar is actually quite a bit more complicated. Um, for one, most people aren't even aware, but there's at least three kinds of bipolar. I'm sure most people have heard that there's bipolar 1 and there's bipolar 2. Bipolar 3 also exists, and that refers to people who, and they usually have a family member uh, or a close relative who suffers from bipolar 1 or 2. And these are people, my mother's one of them, who, when they take antidepressants, they have the same response as somebody with bipolar. It triggers hypomania. Um, Now, obviously, people with bipolar occasionally do have to take antidepressants. Some of them take them all the time if they're primarily depressed. But it's also true that for just about every bipolar, uh, anytime you take an antidepressant, there's a risk of precipitated mania. It's kind of the way it is, bipolar. Most people, the difference between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 is sort of hotly contested, and it changes varying who you speak to, what you read, that kind of thing. But, and I'm using more of a DSM-4 description, but the basic difference is that bipolar 2, well, first, misconception number one is that one is worse than the other. Or more specifically, bipolar type 1 is more severe than bipolar type 2. It's not true. They're just different. Bipolar 1 is sort of classic bipolar. That's where people alternate between periods of depression and mania. They can also, usually the mania is preceded by hypomania, but the presence of mania as opposed to hypomania is the key difference between bipolar 1 and 2. Now, mania versus hypomania is really a matter of degree. It used to be that the difference between mania and hypomania was that mania uh, often is accompanied by psychosis. Um, I get that. I have psychotic mania. Not all the time, but when I get manic enough, I experience auditory and visual hallucinations. Um, it's not that uncommon. I mean, it's not even uncommon for people who are having a major depressive episode or a mixed episode to have sensory issues, hallucinations, occasionally, delusional thinking. Um, ugh, contacts are gummy. But, uh, where was I? Oh, Bipolar 1, um, the classic bipolar, alternates between depression and mania, and the manias are can can be and usually are quite severe. They start out, now everybody's different. Everybody's bipolar, who is bipolar. Their pathology manifests itself in different ways. So what uh, is characteristic of my manias might look completely different from somebody else's mania, but a good psychiatrist can pick out the mood state, uh, um, and separate it from personality or behavior that's derived from the context in which the patient is currently, you know, residing in. Um, but for me, I usually don't just wake up and I'm manic. It's something that builds, starts out with hypomania or a mixed episode. Now, a mixed episode is sort of a dysphoric mania or a very agitated depression. I mean, kind of either way, it's sort of, as the name implies, a mix of the two states. It has features of both. Pure mania, however, once you know what you're looking for, or you've had it a few times, you know exactly what you're seeing or what you're feeling. Um, Now, the classic symptoms and signs are pressured rapid speech, impulsivity, reckless behavior. I already touched upon sensory disturbances, um, uh, just general agitation and, a need to move, sort of a inability to sit still or shut up, or, the need to, some people even dress differently, they like to wear really flashy clothes in weird ways. Some people just say fuck clothes and they get naked and run around like that. That's the other thing about mania. Like, you feel very different about yourself, You feel incredibly confident and, despite all evidence to the contrary, you feel like, you're very desirable, you're very sexy, you're very charismatic, you're just one of the smartest people that ever lived. You know, Everybody wants to hear everything you have on your mind and want to say, and you know, uh, you just feel like you sparkle, kind of, like you're a celestial among mortals. Um, and sometimes when I'm manic, I feel like the rest of the world is moving so slowly, and it's like, speed up, Why are you guys all walking, talking, acting at half speed? Is weird. And then, you know, I'll come crashing down and I'll realize, oh, it was me. I was just really moving fast, and it seemed like everybody else was stuck in the mud. But the other thing about, severe mania is a lack of insight. You will hear people say that they function better when they're manic, or at least off their meds, which usually equals mania in my case. That they're only on their game when they're manic. They're more creative. And sometimes you are. I mean, like, the thing is, there are good and positive aspects to mania. You are more productive. You are more creative. I think you are actually probably smarter. I mean, you have abilities that you don't have at baseline. And for that reason, it is sort of like a drug, an endogenous drug as opposed to an exogenous drug like, cocaine or heroin. But a drug nonetheless. I mean, it can almost be abused. Sometimes when I'm feeling, I also have had a drug problem, and sometimes when I really want to get high, but I know I can't get high, instead I'll just stop taking my meds because I know that very quickly start getting manic. I'll feel better than if I took drugs. It's right there in my brain. I just have to kind of, you know, take the lock off the gate. Lithium being the lock. Um, the downside to all this, though, is that with all this grandiosity and, big ideas and um, insane amount of, oh god, it's itchy under this thing. Um, insane amounts of self-confidence and, you know, almost delusional belief in one's powers. Sometimes it actually is delusional. I've had delusions that I had godlike powers, or sometimes I was the devil or some sort of supernatural being that had powers that, you know, I could control people's minds or whatever, your brain, it's kind of like trying to explain a dream. It doesn't, psychosis, while, like in a dream, you don't just sort of see colors and stuff. It has a narrative, and usually it stars people who are in your life. Psychosis is kind of like that because, like for me, the last time I was hospitalized, it was for mania, and I had one bad day where I just flitted in and out of psychosis, and I was in the quiet room a couple times. They shot me up with Haldol and Ativan a couple times, but like the day before, I had been reading a book on like particle physics or something, and I couldn't stop thinking about like what like an electron would look like, or what it would feel like, or if I could like form elements just by thinking about them, but like clearly I was recycling data from the day before in my brain and running it through the filter of manic confusion and outputting you know nonsense basically, but you know sometimes psychosis like isn't like that. It's completely random and weird. Like you really don't see the connection to your life, or your recent life anyway. But usually there is sort of a theme, and it has to do with recent events or even past events, but more often recent. You also get very aggressive. Well, I get very aggressive when I'm manic, which is also a very classic symptom. I get a lot of fights. It's been a long time since I hit a person, but I did hit a wall a couple weeks ago. Um, Still paying for that one with pain. I've punched a lot of holes in a lot of walls over the years. I really abhor hurting other people, but sometimes I just can't control my rage, and I lose control. Um, I've spent so much money while manic, and I do terrible, horrible things like, um, my parents have pretty much supported me my entire life, but I had no problem, like, they won't even, like, use their credit card in front of me anymore because they have this suspicion that, I have the ability to just glance at the card and memorize the number instantly. It doesn't quite work that way. I do have a talent for memorizing strings of random digits and spitting them back out, you know, weeks later or whatever, but, come on, like, I'm not, at least I know, now that I'm not crazy, I know I don't have any real special powers or talents, and especially nothing that's, completely pseudoscience garbage, Anyway, hypomania is, as the name implies, hypo, is just sort of a lesser mania. And people get a lot done in hypomania. Some people only get hypomania. They never take that extra step to mania. And a lot of those people are the people who are running the world and entertaining the world. And, you need that kind of energy and that kind of charisma to, function in those capacities. But that's fine if it just stayed hypomania. The problem is for me and for a lot of other people, it doesn't. Oh my god, I'm almost up to 20 minutes. Alright, I talked about mania. So this is part A, I guess. Part B will be depression. So I guess that's enough for now. Yeah. Let me sign off in a cool way. Watch this. See how cool I am? Oh yeah. Cool.